70% of Indian population is dependent directly or indirectly on agriculture for their livelihood. 70%. But the most important thing to notice is that of the 70% of the people dependent on agriculture, 83% of the agriculture population are marginal farmers, which means they don't have in their custody more than 2 hectares of land, either owned by them or by lease. So if their landed property to produce any agricultural product is less than 2 hectares, they are considered marginal farmer. And 83% of the Indian farmer is a marginal farmer. India produces quite a lot of cereals, grains, and India is the largest producer of grains and second largest producer in pulses. The whole production of Indian agriculture is considered to be one of the largest. And India is the producer of 25% of the global agricultural products, 25%, 1/4 of it. Still, the Indian farmer is suffering. The Indian farmer is hungry. He doesn't have good life standards and he's on permanent debt. Most of the farmers feel that they cannot ever come out of this the debt trap. The crisis of the Indian farmer does not start now. Right from the Mughal period or from the Zamindari system when it was first established during the time of Aurangzeb, the Indian farmer's life permanently continued in this shadow. There was no real solution offered directly or indirectly by any changing governments. The only dramatic change that we have seen was in the late 1950s and early 1960s, where the Indian agricultural production has grown dramatically up. We call it the Indian Green Revolution. That's the point, because the population was also doubling and it was growing very much upwards. We have doubled and tripled the population from that time. But India could produce food for them, though the farmer remained hungry because with his money he could not buy the consumer products, and most of them live under poverty line. 30% of the Indian population is in any standards under poverty line. They don't have money to buy their basic requirements. The farmers are dependent, despite this great production that India has achieved with the Green Revolution, the farmer is still dependent on weather and moneylender and the market, which is not in his favor all any time. The prices are determined by many other factors. He cannot decide his price. In many states, some of the major products like grains, there is a minimum support price guaranteed and you have to give it there. And even to get that money, one has to wait for a long time. And most of the time, the farmer is pledging his harvest 1 year or 2 year or 3 year in advance to the moneylender. And then there are new seeds coming, sometimes offering high productivity. Like in the case of the cotton production area, the seeds were coming which offered high productivity than usual, and that required a lot of new fertilizers and pesticides. They got everything on loan, and most of them failed to pay it back. But then they understood a different problem. The seeds were sometimes terminated, means they cannot use the same seed for production again. They have to buy the seed at a higher price. So they got entrapped permanently on in this process. During the Green Revolution, we had a very successful model that made the big dramatic change in the sector of agriculture. Early 1960s, one of the major things that happened, which made a change, was the Bhakra Nangal Dam that has blocked 2 major rivers and diverted the water for irrigation. And many fields in Punjab and Haryana and far away in Rajasthan got water because of this great dam. But it had also a lot of subsequent and secondary products. One was production of electricity. Hydroelectric projects were made, and the water that was blocked was used to turn turbines, and electricity was made. And many villages in Punjab and Haryana got their lights or electricity in their villages because of the new hydroelectric project. But not only lights. The farms got electricity for pumping water for irrigation. That made a big change. Again, there was a new fertilizer factory coming up in the same area because the land was affected with a serious problem, the absence of potassium and gypsum. That was caused because of the floods that was coming from the rivers Ravi and Bias every year. That was washing away the fertilizers. Then the new fertilizer factory produced fertilizers that was precisely required for the lack of certain elements in the land, and that could be repaired. Another major advantage was the dam has also stopped 2 floods in the year, because every year there were 2 floods, one in the monsoon and one in summer when the ice was melting in Himalayas. So the 2 major floods and the rivers were flooding, and it stopped the agriculture production at one side, and secondly it remained water blocks everywhere, and malaria was in every village in Punjab and Haryana at that time. The agriculture sector got a big boom with the fertilizer factory, the electricity coming, the irrigation, and the 2 agricultural universities in Hisar and the Punjab Agricultural University produced excellent seeds conducive to the Indian situation and understanding what we require, high productive seeds, and which was provided to farmers at a very low price. So the Indian agricultural revolution that made, the productivity or the net product has grown 200 times up in 5 years. And that's one of the miracles of agriculture that happened in the last century. India was waiting for ships with wheat in PL40 program from United States at the time, but later we could export wheat. And warehouses came, the Food Corporation of India came, and the farmers were supported with a supporting price system because the minimum price was guaranteed, and the wheat and rice were collected and was in the mandi, which means market. This was collected, and there was a established structure emerged, and there was a percentage of money would be going to the collecting person or group or structure, and this almost worked successfully for many people. But at the end of the day, Indian agriculture started requiring the next revolution. That was foreseen by a lot of people, almost all political parties. Most of the political parties suggested changes in the farming sector because some of the changes that was required, one was modernization of Indian farms. A major part of Indian farms were still using the cattle force, and also it was less productive because of the human energy that was required for agriculture production. In many places, people left their farmlands. I can tell one example of Kerala, which was once a big production center of rice. And most of the production centers are not, the land is just left behind because it's no more economically viable to produce agriculture product. People left farmlands in many places. In many places, it was still successful, but the farmer was still never happy. 50% of the Indian women are undernourished. 60% of Indian children are still undernourished. We produce a lot of agriculture products and dairy products, but still people are undernourished. And 50% of the women are anemic in India. These are in the United Nations reports about Indian agriculture. The sources are very authentic and we can believe it. Also, the farmer got sidelined politically and socially and economically. Urbanization got new power, and most of the political leaders, even if sometimes when they represented the farm sector, they all came from the urban cities. New urban centers emerged, and that produced a lot of new jobs, and more men especially, left the villages to the urban cities to be workers in the construction sector. And more Indian women were the leaders of the agriculture production. The Food and Agriculture Report of United Nations very clearly say that almost 40% of the Indian farmland was left behind for the women to look after, and the men went to the cities to work. That is in a way good because it's an empowerment of women at one side. But on the other side, more people left their farms and look for other jobs for 2 reasons. One, the agriculture products were not giving enough money for them. Number 2, most of them were on loans, they have permanent debts. So people have to go and earn money, not for a better life, but to pay back their debts. Debt is an important element in Indian agriculture. Earlier, the kind of the debt trap people were using to get generations of people working in the farms, but simply giving a small amount, then it is handled in a way that you cannot pay back, then the interest is accumulated, then you are indebted for your whole life to work, and your next generation, maybe 3 generations, you would be tied up, kind of bonded labor. Bonded labor is abolished by law in India, but in several different forms, it still exists in India. So the Indian farmer, again, there's another set of people, or the farm workers. They are just daily laborers in the farm. Their life standard is also very, very, very bad. There is no structure that looks after these people. Officially, there are a lot of forms, but there is no institutionalized form to protect these people. They are left to the blind forces of market. Blind forces of market are sometimes good for ascertaining prices and consumer products. But for this sector of people who have some food to eat to survive, maybe they get, if they are under poverty line, they get subsidized grains from the consumer shops, but their life standards still remain very, very bad. One of the most successful set of people in the farm sector are in Punjab, in Haryana, in Kerala, for example. They left the grain cultivation and they went for the traditional cultivation that Kerala was always for, the cash crops. They cultivated earlier coconut, pepper, or anything that is, or they tried vanilla, rubber, these kind of products, which is not connected with our day-to-day food, but for money. Traditionally, such states imported rice from other states. Now, for example, the present system in India, the rice or wheat that you produce cannot go out of the state without an established system of redistribution by the state. It's sold at the local mandi, which is known as mandi is the word for market, local mandi. So there is a fixed price available for your product and you can sell it. Recently, there is an effort, repeated efforts in this line to change the situation for better. The sugarcane farmers of Maharashtra or the potato farmers in Bihar, there have been experiments in changing the system to make it better, to open it up for the main market. For example, if farmers can sell their product in the main market, well, can it be better? Because the minimum support price is guaranteeing only a certain price. So, but that has one advantage. One advantage is you are not completely gone. If the products are not having any price in the market, there is a guaranteed price which you get. If the market price is very low also, you still get the guaranteed price. On the other side, the price offered, sometimes the system is so corrupt, so delayed, that you don't get the money in time. There are cases people waiting for 3 months, 4 months after giving the product to get their money. So what's the solution? The money lender again. So all of them are dependent on the money lender. And there are suicides and suicides. For last 25 years, we hear thousands and thousands of Indian farmers suiciding because they cannot pay their debt or the harvest has failed. They sometimes go for very productive new seeds. Then they end up that these seeds, they cannot recultivate again. They are terminated seeds. You have to buy it again for a higher price. The fertilizers become very expensive. So you cannot cope with it. You have a higher product, better product achievement in the harvest, but still your life standard is not changing. You don't get any money. So therefore, Indian farming sector in all ground, from all sides, was calling for a change. Then comes a new set of rules now, suddenly, that officially offers solution for the present crisis. I'll go into the law. It's highly disputed whether these laws are effective or not, but the laws officially say that there are 3 laws. And these laws were passed in the Indian Parliament in such a haste, without properly discussing the details. And at the end of the day, there's a huge complaint from all sectors that these laws are going to be very dangerous for the Indian farmer. Instead of addressing the problem, these laws are complicating the situation in not in the right direction. So one of the laws, which is known as the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Law, it says that it expands the scope of trade areas of the farmers' produce, which means what? Very simple, that the farmer is now free to sell his product anywhere. It expands his market. He can sell it outside the city, outside the district, outside the state, anywhere he can sell it. Or anyone from anywhere can buy this product on the other side. And what happens then? So it looks very promising. So you don't have to depend on this minimum support price. That's cancelled, okay? Then the new price is based on the principles of market. So then who decides what's the price in the market? And in any case, the consumer, the buyer decides the price. You can decide any price, but if the buyer does not buy at that price, you cannot impose it. Because especially for the farmer, he's at the receiving end because he has a product which is perishable. The wheat, after a certain time, he cannot keep for himself. It will damage. The rice, you cannot keep after a certain time. And products like vegetables or other perishable things, fruits or those kind of things will be absolutely useless after certain days. So you have to, of course, sell it to the buyer. He will buy in en bloc. For example, somebody wants to produce a lot of tomato ketchup and he's willing to buy all the tomatoes, but he has a special price. So the idea is that you are free to sell your product at your sweet will, but will it work? That's the question on the other side. It doesn't work because you cannot dictate the terms of the price. You can say, I would sell at 40 rupees only. But today, when you say I'm selling for 40 rupees, the buyer would say, no, I would buy it for 30 rupees. So I would not agree. I go back. Then I see my tomatoes are getting rotten slowly. So I go the next day and said, okay, I sell it for 30 rupees. But then he says but that was yesterday's price. Your product has, the quality has gone down now. Now I don't buy even for 30 rupees. I would take it for 20 rupees. And tomorrow I don't want it. So he's forced, not by the market forces, but the decision of the buyer to sell on his terms, at his price, and he has no say in the whole. The minimum support price was also defective because sometimes the prices are high in the market, but he cannot sell it high on the market, but he has to give it to the agency, in the mandi, because it goes to another system, the Food Corporation of India and the distribution network. It's redistributed in a different way. But one was defective and you have another option now given, which seems right away not acceptable. So if you go back to the old system, it's still defective. And the new system, not only it promises any big solution, but there are inherent dangers that one sees. Also, there is another law. This also says that you can have electronic trading. Looks very attractive. But who is electronically trading? The farmer, Indian farmer who has 2 acres of land. The annual income is less than 50,000 rupees, which is less than 1,000 euros per year. What does he do with that? Electronic marketing facilities. He cannot do anything. He will have to, it's all good for the big farmer who can afford it, who knows it. So he cannot go for any electronic marketing. Then the government, there was assessed charges by the government, which will be, there won't be any levy on the farmers. Okay, all looking good. But finally, you have to get some good price for it. There you have no capacity to bargain. So your bargaining power is limited there. So it looks like that is why the allegation from the farmers or the major opposition parties in India is that this is going to be a trap, and this is going to be instead of the minimum support price structure that was guaranteed earlier, the corporates are coming and they are going to decide the price. They have the warehouses and they can dictate the price. You are under the mercy of the corporate giant. That's the fear. If it goes exactly shifting to that side, that's a danger, and that's there. 3 bills are there. And these bills were passed so fast in the parliament without any discussion, with a voice vote. That's not what was expected in a situation like this, where laws are made which have longer implications to reach out people, and their fundamental, life and their life standards are connected with that. So now if you sell the product to some buyer, how do you get the price? Now the second bill guarantees that the price should come to you in a very small time, 3 days, or within a few days you should get the money. But if you don't get the price at the right time, you can go to the district magistrate court, but you cannot go for a civil court. That's the problem for a lot of litigation possibilities were there, because it ends up at the end of the day so many civil cases, And the lawyers are terribly unhappy about this because, I mean, there's a huge possibility that they have is lost. But how can you go to a district magistrate court, this farmer? How can he do it? I mean, it's not an easy thing. There is not even, if you go to a civil court, you can even claim the interest of the money and all. But what is that? If you get it after 5 years of litigation, and if you get, before that, if you don't suicide, it doesn't work. But there is a possibility that you can go to a court of law to get this money. So it looks okay for the urban people or the rich farmer, but for the poor farmer, this looks absolutely an impossible structure. Then the third thing, you can have a pre-arranged selling, a contract selling of your harvest. For example, I'm making a cultivation now, and my harvest is expected after 6 months. I can sell it now. I can go to a seller or the agricultural corporation's representative is there. I say that my product is coming, and I mean, I would like to sell it for this price. So when I sell, I can even get the money in advance. So it looks very attractive, isn't it? I mean, you have an agreement. Whatever is the end product, you'll be buying. So you're not dependent on the market price. You are not dependent on the end product success, but he has an interest in the success of the products. There, he will have to insist on what pesticide you should use, what kind of fertilizer you have to use. He will insist on many things because the end product is his, and he has paid the money. So he's an opportunity for him to come into your farming process because it's his interest also. But then again, there's another trap in the whole thing. Traditionally, Indian farmer did not have a monetary support coming from the government to produce agriculture products. He can take loan from the banks, the cooperative banks, which is, the Indian cooperatives are not really cooperatives. These are a kind of, whatever is the major ruling party of any state, they are controlling the cooperative sector practically. And this is what you call a milking machine for the political structure. But the cooperative banks, most of the time, they want mortgage of your land. Your sole earning method was your land. And this is not a new process. For a long time, for centuries, the money lender, later the bank gives you the money. You cannot pay it. Then you take more money, and there is a breaking point. Then you cannot do anything. Then you end up in hanging yourself. There are 10,000s of Indian farmers suicided. Not only with the changes coming, but other ways also. The money lenders' binding influence on their life is unchangeable. Earlier, it was the landlord, the feudalist controlled them. Later, the money lender and the political movements that control the money lenders and the banking structure that control their life. And they are the custodians of their life, their misery, and their, whatever they have. So it's in the interest of a lot of people to remain the same system. Also, it's the interest of a lot of other people to change the system for their benefit. And who are going to benefit? You can see that the major corporations in India, with the biggest corporations in India, they're making a lot of agro product companies in all major agriculture districts in last months. Seems that they are waiting for it. The moment the bill is in implementation, what would happen is the farmers are going to be, there is a new lodge coming. All landlord has gone, then the banks have gone, and now the corporations are coming instead. So shift of responsibility of exploitation goes from the landlord, then the money lender, now the new agro corporations. So the dramatic change in the structure is somewhere far, far away. So both the system, the existing system that many people want to continue as it is, as the struggling farmers want, as well as the new law which is forcefully implemented on the other side, both have very serious defective mechanisms. So we need a change. Absolutely, it's undoubted that Indian agriculture field need a change to get something better out of this. What are the requirements? We need change in the farming sector by modernizing it. So how it can be more productive? There are many different ways which the successful models in different parts of the world. Even in India, one good model is the cooperative society developed by in the dairy field by one cooperative society in Gujarat, which produces the Amul dairy product. And the farmers are directly giving their milk to the cooperative societies. And warehousing has gone from the private person to the local cooperative society, and money is given to them properly. And there's a mechanism that it is marketed centrally, and it's a very successful model. And edible oils, the same successful model that are working in India for decades now. There is no effort to stabilize such a structure or to institutionalize such a structure all over India so that the farm crisis can come to an end without going back to the old exploitation structure at one side, or without submitting the whole agrarian sector to the new corporate bosses. Both are exploitative. So the solution probably is there in a very successful alternative coming up through the cooperative sector, which is to be institutionalized and to be formalized by the established systems. That's not in the agenda of either any of the opposition parties or the ruling party. Perhaps one of the best solutions that we can try can be taken from these two examples of the edible oil cooperative societies and the milk cooperative society. There is another model of the same pattern coming in Milma in Kerala. Also, it's a very successful dairy product cooperative society. Both all these things we are modeling the Japanese agricultural cooperatives. That's one of the successful models also in the whole world, without submitting to the corporate sector or submitting to the local governments. What they did in the dairy agricultural cooperatives that we have done in India is as simple as follows. The fundamental idea is that's an institutionalized cooperative society, but all farmers are bound in the cooperative structure. Imagine a situation that the farmer is no more dependent on his capacity to sell or the force structure that he has to give a product at a certain price, but the cooperative society buys it at a fixed price. The cooperative society has a scientific warehousing capacity where he can keep the society can keep the product and bargain with the corporate or any other buyer and then decide the price and give the profit back to the farmer. And if those cooperative societies are democratically functioning, with every year changing its leadership, it could go very long way. And the government should institutionalize this because there should be laws governing these cooperative societies, and all possibilities of exploitation should be curtailed at this stage of building up these cooperative societies. And it can also do other things, like farming can be made cheaper. One way, for example, if you want tractor instead of your cattle, so you cannot afford to rent a tractor or own a tractor. But if you are a member of the agriculture cooperative society and they have 20 tractors, you need only half a day's tractor, 5 times a year. You can rent the time. It's accounted. And your farm will be looked after by the tractor. The plowing is done. So then you need not own everything, but the cooperative ownership will be beneficial for you. Sharing and using. The capacity is used by everybody. No such thought is there, either with the model that was existing, which the opposition wants to stick on to, and with the new pattern which the government is trying to impose upon. No, this is not there in both the patterns. And on the other side, what is the major complaint of the opposition? They would say it's simply selling out to corporations. Yes, it can finally end up to selling up to corporations. Instead of the local banks and money lender, there will be new structures, more sophisticated, coming to continue to do the same thing. From one exploitative framework to another exploitative framework. So do you want to go back to the old exploitative structure, or you want to go to the new exploitative structure? It's a binary option. Select this or that. You have no other option. That's how it's presented in India. If you say that, I don't think that the present bill is good, immediately you're accused or branded. You have a corporate phobia. Or if you say that the new structure is good, and the new structure is brought out by the government led by BJP, and I mean it's supported by another mother organization which is calling for a with another agenda, which is a Hinduization of India, which is very seriously accused of. So then you are a supporter of the Hindutva of Hindu forces. So you cannot take an independent decision without getting accused from any of the side. And that's the challenge that we have to take a position. We have to understand the situation, detaching from these two pressing binary compulsions. There are solutions, and these solutions we have to bring out to people as an alternative. It doesn't look very easy. There are thousands of farmers in the outskirts of Delhi. They have come there to live there for several months. They came with the wheat and they're making their food there, and I mean they are saging the city because they want this bill to be withdrawn immediately. The government on the other side feel that this is a compulsion and this is a problem, and they put a serious new allegation. They said that amongst these people, since they are coming from India, from Punjab, the separationist groups also could be there. Also, the Maoists are infiltrating in those groups, because any political group would try to completely disown and destroy any kind of struggle, because it's a political position that they want to insist upon, and their authority and their determination of their views is what they are trying to do. On the other side, these people feel that the government is selling out the whole farm sector to the corporate bosses which they are friendly of. So it's a political entangled situation. So this deadlock is continuing for last several weeks now, and life is becoming difficult for the people there, and life is very difficult for the people living in the capital of India. And Indian agriculture sector is facing one of the biggest threats it has ever seen since independence. Supporting of this law are the ruling party, which has a brutal majority in the parliament. Also, it's supported by several supporters of the ruling party of several forms, and they are overtime working to defend and explain how it is going to modernize Indian farmer. And as per the bill says, in 2 years, Indian farmers' income is going to double. A lot of great promises are there. Corporations are not bad. Corporations are really good. Actually, the wealth is created by them. Therefore, we have to support them. That's a completely pro-corporate, especially agro-corporate position they are promoting. On the other side, the Congress party, the Bahujan Samaj Party, these are major political parties in Indian scene. And Congress party was ruling India for several decades from independence, and a centrist party. And Bahujan Samaj Party is representing the underprivileged section of the population. It's a very powerful political movement on the other side. NCP, Nationalist Congress Party of mainly in Maharashtra. And Maharashtra is a major center where sugarcane is a major product. These parties are opposing the bill, but they are not coming in the forefront. In the front of the struggle are farmers, faceless farmers, thousands of them. They are there. So they seriously believe that this is a life and death question. The government cannot do this. Either the government has to withdraw this thing, or they are going to continue this unendingly. It's a deadlock. So I don't want to take any position on any of these sides. You need not be, and you should not be forced to take one position in a crisis. There are merits on this side and merits on the other side. Let's try to see things with a properly weighing situation. And we are not going to decide anything, because it's the government has to decide or the farmers collective has to decide. But we can make an alternative suggestion and solution which may be influential, which may find solutions, if not today, but tomorrow or in the long run. That's what we are trying to do here. Let's take a very, very cool position that both the parties are honest to what they say. There are accusations on both sides. I mean, very harsh arguments on both sides. So if government wants to modernize the agriculture sector, and they see that the traditional system is binding the farmer, the middlemen are taking the money and they are exploited, and that's the reason for the crisis. And if they want to modernize it, there are solutions, which is different from what is offered now. And is that possible now? Is it too late? No, it's not too late. Because so maybe that's one solution that the government has also. Because an angry farmer crowd has to be satisfied. I mean, it's a compelling situation. And probably the government can say that we consider all these positions and we will make a new bill which will rectify the problems of the present bill which are shown. Of course, the government has already shown interest in amending the bill. The farmers are not ready for amending. They want total repealing of the bill. So that's why there is a deadlock. But perhaps government has to say that we freeze the bill and we come with a new amendment, and with the amendment in implementation, and maybe we can go for a new bill. I mean, some kind of a practical solution they have to take. But none of these two positions are solution. There is no clear solution if we go back to the old system. And there is absolutely so many dangers in the new position, new bills offered by the government. Both are dangerous. Why the new positions can be dangerous? We have examples in front of us. There are two examples. One in Maharashtra. The market was opened in Maharashtra for the sugar canes. And that was done some years back. Did it change the productivity or the life standard of the farmer in Maharashtra? We have clear statistics that say that it did not. Rather, the life standard of the farmer has gone further down only. That's a very clear model that we have. A similar law has failed. Potato farmers in Bihar, again, the same thing. When the laws were changed, it did not reach out to people, and the end result was not successful. So what are the solutions? So if the present model has very clear identified problems, and the old situation is certainly and clearly exploitative, because no one can say that the Indian farm sector, the old system that was existing, was good. If that's the case, thousands of farmers would not have suicided. The farmers would not have been in that trap, and their life standard would not have been bad. There needs change, there needs modernization, there needs a dramatic change in the Indian farm sector. So what can be done? There are two possibilities. A total change in the agriculture sector. That's what I would say. Going to cooperatives, agricultural cooperatives. Take the model of Milma, Amul, all these cooperative societies which are very, very successful and improve the life standard of people. And as a nation also, this was tried in Japan after the Second World War, and it's very, very successful. And it's very simple. All what you can do is, the government has to take the initiative. Government has to take the first initiative to legislate a new law to establish cooperative societies in each state, or a national policy, where in the districts, there should be district level cooperative societies, and a state, there should be state level cooperative societies, and maybe local cooperative societies. Not like the present cooperative societies that exist and controlled by the political parties, but independent cooperative societies of real farmers, of registered farmers only, people who are really in the farm. And their cooperative society should get financing, because there can be the central bank, the Reserve Bank can give money to an apex bank, which can distribute the money to the district banks, district cooperative societies banks, and they should fast make warehousing required for that area. Because now the big corporations have warehousing, so they can keep products. The farmer cannot, the mandi cannot. Mandi has, but it's not very effective. So there should be farmer-owned warehousing, that no product is perished, it can be preserved. And there should be money in their bank, in their cooperative bank, so that once I have a product and I know what's the price, the minimum price that we have decided that we'll try to sell it at a higher price, because each district cooperative society should authorize its representatives to bargain with the agro market, and what price they should sell, they should decide for you. And you have given their mandate to them, and they decide the price. And then you know that this is the minimum price I am going to get. I can keep it. Nobody can press me, because we have warehousing. And no farmer is pressed, because there is money for my product already in my cart. I can withdraw up to 75% of my product, even if it is not sold now. It may be sold after 1 month, but I have my money available. I can buy my food, I can buy my clothes, and I can pay the tuition fee of my children. So I would be happy when I have my product. But even before the product is sold, when the government with the new bill can say that you can make a contract with the buyer, the corporation, agro corporation, much in advance. Okay, the cooperative society, your cooperative society can advance you money, not advance you money, but giving you a monthly withdrawal capacity, so that your system runs. And if there is lack of money, there is an apex bank that would give money. And this bank should be able to give money to the cooperatives to buy its tractors, buy pesticides, and buy the seeds. And that should be preserved, and that should be distributed. And these cooperative societies employ agricultural experts in each places. And they have to work for the land. They have to check the land, and what kind of fertilizer is required for each land, they should check. Experts, your own people, paid by you. And this mechanism will work only when there is a proper legislation to establish such cooperative societies. And if it's truly democratic and it's functioning properly. And then it has, and also the price can be controlled properly, that it's not dropped down under a certain thing by the central, the representative cooperative body. And cooperatives are successful in many countries. Such efforts, even in consumer fields, in great marketing chains, successfully work under cooperative sector in many countries. it is possible and it is working. So this is one solution, that the farmer has the buying power. Crops can fail and you cannot pay an insurance. It's expensive. But the cooperative society can insure all the farmers collectively, and the end product can be, any farm failure, or product failure, or anything, or flood or anything can be, there should be insurance possible. So you're guaranteed nothing is happening to you. And you're not given all the money together. There's a withdrawal limit per month when you take advance money for your product. I'm selling 80 tons of rice. I get at least 75% of the money accounted in my thing, which I can withdraw so next 6 months later, I would get the money, but I would be able to withdraw the money, only 1/6 of it this month. And so I won't be able just spending out the money. So this can be controlled also, that the farmer is not ending up in spending out the whole money. So because it's an advance given to them. Once the whole product is sold, you get the whole money credited to your account and you are happy. And then the seed is given, the fertilizer is given, everything by your cooperative society, because the whole operations, you give a share to the cooperative society. And if the cooperative society makes profit, you get a dividend of it. And that's how the cooperative societies work. And when it has to function properly, it needs a proper legislation to control it, and proper legislation to ensure that there is no exploitation involved, and proper legislation to avoid any kind of malpractices. And if there are anything that is dictated later, there should be legislation. That's how government should function. That's how laws should be implemented. Well, that's one way of solution, which is a long-standing solution for Indian agriculture sector, in my view, and that perhaps would be the solution to the Indian farmers' life standards problem now. Once you have these agricultural cooperative societies, established offices there, it can extend in many different ways. You can have healthcare center connected to that. So you can have visiting doctors. You can appoint such a person. For example, once in a week a doctor comes and you hire a person, and he would visit all elder people and look after them. You can have a lot of structures. You need not look for government for everything supported by people can help themselves. But if sufficient mechanism is established, such a system based on cooperative collective movement can be a solution in a society like India, which is largely agricultural, where the agriculture producer has not much capacity of bargaining or marketing and controlling the price levels of his product. There are some solutions already coming out from some centers how to modify these structures. One of the solutions that has come from some organization is that there can be agri courts, or can be established, so that there are special courts which can handle the issues connected with payment of this money. We can have a supportive system which is guaranteed by the government. Government should establish a minimum support price every year, and they would be willing to buy any product at that price, and any corporation can buy not under that price, can be above that price. If there is a guarantee like that, yes, it will work. But then what about the payment? So payment, it is guaranteed that, it should be paid very soon. But if there is a delay, there is a conflict, you can go to a court, district magistrate's court, and okay, that's a long process, and farmer cannot afford to do that. But then if there is another provision that the agro cooperatives are bound to give a bank guarantee to cover the amount that they tend to buy. For example, if one wants to buy 1,000 tons of wheat, what would be the minimum price in the market? To that amount, he should guarantee to the system that if he does not pay the money, his deposit can be forfeited and this money can be given to the farmer. Anyway, they want to buy and they want to make profit, because if you buy a wheat for 18 rupees in the local market, you are buying in the local market for 64 rupees or 70 rupees. Huge margin is gone to different players. Now this will be gone only to the corporations, which has larger investment, of course. They are putting money and ideas and marketing possibilities. Also, there is no control on exporting products. Do you remember the old statement that Obama once said that Americans don't have enough meat because Indians started eating more meat? Because we are exporting a lot of meat. We are exporting a lot of products. So if we start exporting our food production, one good example, 25% of the cereals produced in the world are from India. We are importing cereals, lentils and all we are importing. available products are gone to other countries, then there will be another issue. So imagine a situation if food is processed in India and exported without considering the local requirement, that can be detrimental. Corporations will make a lot of money. That alone is not sufficient. One good example I can tell with another example of rubber cultivation. Central Kerala, there is a place where rubber is cultivated and most of the farmers are busy with cultivating rubber. If you have 2 sheets of rubber per day, you are a rich man. You could buy a car at the end of the year. That was the situation because global rubber price was very high at that. Indian rubber price was very high at that time, and they were the only producers. It was all coming from one place. For tire making and a lot of requirements, you need rubber. Then the open policy came, and now India can import rubber. So from Thailand and Middle East and some East Asian countries, the producer, the tire producer could import rubber. So the price, of course, it's an international market and it's based on the market rules. The prices have gone down. Nobody wants to buy your rubber because you can import rubber at a higher price. Raw materials were imported at a lower price. So the prices have gone down from 120 rupees per kilogram to something like 20 rupees per kilogram. The farmers suffered. But you know what's the argument on the other side? Well, these farmers suffered, but we made a lot of production of tires and the government got a lot of money because tires were an end product. We sold a lot more tires and Indian rubber production, the products out of rubber has grown up and we got more corporate taxes and more income, and the wealth we created. What is wealth? It's quality of life that one can buy with that is what is wealth. And the life of the farmers have gone down. So these kind of mechanisms can be stopped if, for example, if they could keep the rubber in their custody and if there's a cooperative society which could decide that we don't sell it here, but we have other markets which we can explore to. For example, instead of selling the rubber in Kerala, if there is another buying center which they know, they can keep it. They can, this was one momentary problem that there was an excess import. You can tide over if you have a cooperative society that has money. The farmer need not suffer. The market plays its role, it's ground reality. But still, you have your mechanism if your collective has a decision power. And if you don't have the decision-making power, you are a victim either of the corporations or the mandi structure. The old structure is defective and the farmers are suffering. And the new option is not a positive end. It has so many challenging threats involved in that. And that is why there is a struggle. But both the positions are not the end solution. We need a strong reform in Indian farm sector to make a dramatic change in the life standards of people. Thank you.
Yeah, it's quite interesting talk. I did try to follow it before I read it. I basically thought the whole thing, this farmers bill which has been passed by the government is actually for benefit of the large farmers who've got a large holdings, and they can deal with corporates, right? That's what it is. It's always, we know it. It's a fact that both in Punjab and Haryana, where this all protest is happening, most of the farmers have got very small holdings. And unfortunately, these holdings, we know it, that the way the farming is done in India, that every time when the farm is passed over to the descendant, the holdings get smaller and smaller. So the small farmers always suffer. And obviously, I can understand the problem. It is okay for the large farmers who have got harvesters or whatever, and they can try to produce vegetables or fruit as per requirement of the big supermarkets or corporate. But a small farmers will not be able to do that. I think your idea of a proper cooperative system is good. I think I agree with that. Yeah, that would be my point of view anyway. Ashok, aapki bari.
The idea of cooperatives looks fine as far as uh, theory is concerned, but practically, given the rural politics in India, production cannot be successful. In fact, in Western UP, all the cooperative sector sugar mills have been sold off to private sector. They failed. Cooperatives can be successful only in marketing if we follow the Amul model or say Mother Dairy model. But there is no guarantee that entire production will be purchased and MSP will be paid. At the moment, our uh, wheat and rice procurement is much higher than the requirement. And that is why the government wants to get out of this, because they are holding at least 3 times the food grains that they need for buffer stock.
Yep.
Another problem is that the farmers in Punjab have got used to this easy farming of wheat and rice and assured sales and assured price. Now they have become risk averse. They don't want to take risk even on cash crops or the pulses, uh, due to the fear that they may not be picked up by the government or some organization like FCI. So now Food Corporation of India has already become bankrupt. It was given subsidies by government, but for last few years, increasingly government is asking it to borrow money. And on this borrowed money, they have also to pay interest. Now they owe about 170,000 crores of rupees, meaning about 17 billion rupees to no, more than 17 billion. I think 170,000 will mean much more no, it is 1,007. It was today I read it somewhere. It was, I think, 1 lakh and 70,000 crores. I don't know how much it will be in dollar terms. So they don't know what to do with that, money. I mean, how to pay that money. The government will have to give at some moment or the other. Now, if they procure more, if the FCI keeps procuring, their loan liability and interest liability will only go up. So the government, instead of paying subsidies to FCI, wants the private sector to foot some bill. But then what about the public distribution system? The government thinks that government, if required, government can buy from the private sector for its PDS, public distribution system. In any case, private sector will be more efficient if they don't indulge in a large scale corruption, like FCI has already entered into. If the private sector is allowed to storage big chunks of food grains, maybe the subsidy of the government will go down. That is also one of the points of view in government. So it is both ways. Farmers have a point, but only Punjab's farmers are not the farming community in India. I mean, farming community in India is quite diverse, and their problems are also quite diverse. So this movement, which started with the Punjab farmers, has now got support all over India, and other farmers are also joining in. And the problem of the government will further grow because they will come up with their own problems. Just now, the main problem of Punjab was MSP and APMC and contract farming. But then if they add other problems to the existing negotiation table, it will be very difficult for the government to handle it. So it is expected that in next 3-4 days, there will be some common point.
That is, yeah.
Yeah, but otherwise there is no way out. I mean, if Punjab farmers also continue their struggle for a very, very long time, they will start losing sympathy. One more point in favor of BJP or the current government is that most of the leaders of the movement are leftists. So they have already started saying that they are, Tukde gang or the communists, and the communists have taken over. So this is also dividing the farmers. In Western UP, it has not picked up because Jats are the main farmers in Western UP, and they are with the BJP. Of course, they are participating, but not in large numbers. And they are insisting that there must be some common ground as soon as possible. So I do not have, any long-term or maybe lasting solutions because of this movement. Maybe the government may either amend or may even withdraw the 3 bills. Also, I mean, they are acts. So even if they withdraw these 3 acts and frame new acts in consultation with the farmers and opposition, it is not going to change. The situation is not going to change much. The government may declare MSP, but their procurement will not be as much as it used to be. Because they don't need it. They simply don't need it. They will leave it to the private sector. And the prices will fall in any case. So these were a few points. Of course, I am a supporter of the farmers movement, and we have also issued a statement. Our group of retired civil servants, which is quite active on this front. But there is no unanimity, even among the retired civil servants in India, whether all the demands of the farmers are genuine. So even the retired agriculture secretaries are saying that Punjab and Haryana farmers have to diversify. In fact, Haryana and Western UP, who are short of water, should not be growing paddy or say sugarcane. These were a few points I wanted to make. That's it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, you're right. And no government would immediately want to lose its face, I mean, in front of a struggle like this. So see, there is a political solution is the only way, but that's not very easy. Winter is coming. I mean, one can see the situation daily. Winter is coming, and I mean, they may not be able to stand for a long time. And also it may lose support. So we cannot come into a conclusion whether this side or that side with this bill and this struggle at this moment. But the agricultural issue, I mean, what you said, for example, also it's different in each stage. And there should be understanding of the situation state by state accordingly. Thank you very much for that.